So you come back from San Francisco, and of course you've got other things that happened that year. You had the famous Baker versus Carr, Reynolds versus Sims, right. U.S. Supreme Court decision, one man, one vote, one member, one vote, right. Or excuse me, one voter, one vote. That had a huge impact that year.
Absolutely. One last thing from San Francisco. Yeah. We were in the Jack Tower in San Francisco. Yeah. This was the Texas delegation and the Western Goldwater campaign headquarters, and we were the only ones in there. And I remember coming back from the Cow Palace after I put on a Goldwater pin. I had Goldwater and I had Romney. And I had some punk Texans come up to me and says, "You can't wear both of those." I said, "I didn't know that." And I took the Goldwater off and I never put it on again. I never put it on again. So, anyways,
he forced you into it.
Absolutely. Huh? But yes, you're right. The Supreme Court in the spring, I think,
64.
Of 1964, decreed that in legislative and congressional apportionment and redistricting, you had to follow the principle of one man, one vote. I do believe, and this is from memory, that maybe, but I do believe the whole suit had started with Gus Scholl, who was head of the AFL-CIO here in Michigan. Yeah. Okay, so we come back, and it's one man, one vote, which means I was overjoyed with it. I had a theory that Republicans were not concentrated in high areas. They were around every place.
Yeah.
But the Democrats were always concentrated in higher. It would be to the Republicans. So we go to work. The problem became the whole process got so long that it pushed the normal working progress of Michigan back.
Right.
The primary elections had to be pushed back. The conventions that were usually held in August had to be held in September. And so that the campaign was shortened.
Right.
It was something that somebody ought to take a look at today. It wasn't a 3-year campaign. It was less than
well, it took that long to approve the maps for all these people running. So these are new districts. Nobody really understood or knew who the candidates were, where they were running. Had a very short campaign. And then you had this avalanche victory by LBJ over Goldwater in November. And the result was what? Crushing defeat for the Republicans.
I think it was worse than that. I think it was worse than that. There was nothing left of the Republican Party after the 1964 election.
Except George Romney. He survived.
Except George Romney.
Were you surprised? Wasn't there a feeling that he was going to get dragged down?
Everything said he was going to get dragged down. But you got to remember that as a party chairman during this election, you couldn't get a Goldwater person to touch a piece of literature or anything else with Romney's name on it.
Right.
They were all convinced. They were the ones that were convinced that Goldwater would win. There was a silent majority out there, and they come out on Election Day. Well, on Election Day, I hope nobody took arsenic or cyanide or something else that was a Goldwater waiting for the silent majority to come out because they would. But yes, it was the Romney thing was unbelievable.
Where was the Romney headquarters on election day? Wasn't it like in the Statler Hotel?
It was at the Statler. I remember I went down on the day after.
In Detroit.
In Detroit, which was a great hotel.
Right.
At Washington Boulevard and Grand Circus Park.
Right.
And I went down, and he was having a press conference in the afternoon. And I went in there, and I was so flattered. He recognized me and said what a great job you people did. And so that was...
Did he seem to be fairly confident at that point that he was going to be able to survive this huge Democratic landslide, you know, that washed over almost every Republican for every other office? Or was he kind of fatalistic, and were his supporters thinking, my God, we cannot withstand this Democratic avalanche, we're going to lose too?
His last campaign stop of the year was in Macomb County. On Monday night, we did wrong. And as he left, I said, Governor, or no, he was, he was Governor, I said, we're going to carry the county by maybe 0.5 percentage point. Well, he said, you're optimistic. Macomb hadn't gone Republican since 1952.
So he didn't even win it in '62 when he was elected to his first term. Yeah.
On 1964, George Romney carried Macomb County by 0.5 percentage point.
Wow.
That's how accurate our telephone calls were.
Wow, that's a heck of a prediction.
About 0.5%, and that's why he recognized me the next day with a big smile.
I should say so.
And I suspect that's where, between the delegation meeting of Goldwater and that day, those are the two things that propelled me to statewide office, statewide party office.
1964, the Michigan Republican Party really was pretty much obliterated except for Governor George Romney and his running mate Bill Milliken. New leadership of the party organization comes in 1965, Ellie Peterson and Bill McLaughlin. What did you face at that time?
I'm sitting in Macomb County saying, I'm just a newcomer to politics, but I sure could do a better job than Elliott did. I didn't know art at that time.
Yeah.
Nor did I understand the nuances of trying to balance Romney and Goldwater and everything. But I'm going to think about running for chairman. Then the announcement is that Art's gone and Ellie's going to be the United One, which is fine. And I didn't think any more of it.
Well, there'd never been a woman chairman before.
No, that's right.
And if there was, there had to be a male vice chairman.
That's right. And so somewhere, and Bill, I don't remember, my name got thrown in the hopper for vice chairman. And the Romney forces and Ellie forces, I was pretty well set up for it. And I got to Lansing and there's people messing around and got me nervous as the devil, so I'm going to have opposition and all this stuff. Well, it never attained, but I was nervous as the devil, as you can only get. And so the next day, by acclamation, Ellie and I were both elected. I was, again, so nervous. There was a platform, because there was a high podium. There was a box to step on to speak from, and I forgot to step on it. I mean, that's how tense it was. But
well, what did you know about Ellie Peterson going into that? Here you were her running mate, and you're elected together. Did you know her very well? Had you gotten to know her during the previous year or two?
Ellie, of course, was the candidate against Phil Hart that year for United States Senate.
In 64.
In 64.
Yeah.
And I met her when she came in to the party headquarters in Macomb County. Now, Ellie came into the party headquarters. She was a little faster than a tornado. Ellie was the most magnificent person in my life, with the exception of my wife and kids. But Ellie would come into a room and the whole thing, and the first time I saw her, she came in to shake hands with the volunteers and everything else, and it was like a whirling dervish. I mean, it was amazing. and that's how I first met Ellie, and I didn't know much more about her until we went to the convention, other than
okay, so at that point, you had a job. What, in advertising?
I was I had spent a number of years in the theater business. I had been at the Michigan Theater, the music hall was Cinerama. Cinerama had just opened a new Summit Theater in downtown Detroit. Now, most people will not remember the Summit Theater. Most people won't remember the Cass Theater. The Cass Theater is one of two legitimate downtown Detroit theaters, the Schubert and the Cass. The Cass was right across the street at the corner of Washington Boulevard and Lafayette from the Free Press. Cinerama had taken it over and had redone the thing beautifully, and it was the Summit Theater. I was managing that. So my boss was great enough to say, oh yeah, go ahead and have fun, but you still got to do your job. And so now
that's pretty tough, isn't it?
It was. I remember one night standing outside, on the spring night, standing outside watching the world go by and thinking, how am I going to do this? I want to do a good job as vice chairman, but how am I going to do the whole thing? About a week or so later, we had a party headquarters on Lothrop Street by the Fishy Theater, and Ellie asked to meet me there. I went there, and Ellie said, Dean Doty, who was the executive director of the party, is going to retire. Would you like his job? Well, to make a long story short, I became not only the vice chair of the party and the executive director of the party, and we made my title executive vice president.
In other words, vice chair is an honorary position. You're pretty much just serving at the pleasure of the party. It's unpaid. And executive director is a real paid staff position day to day, but it's up in Lansing.
It's in Lansing.
And if you're going to do that, you've got to commute, and you were living where?
I was in St. Clair Shores.
And that was a long drive, wasn't it? What were you doing? Driving every day?
Every day. I never wanted to stay in Lansing. My responsibility was my family. I had to let the kids at least see me shave in the morning. So every day on 6 o'clock when I was leaving, I stop at the mobile station, or the standard station at 8 Mile and Mack and